India is the land of Gautam Buddha many centuries ago. Back then, it was a major center for Buddhist learning. That thousands of Buddhist monks had at one time studied there. At one time, Buddhism had a profound influence in China. And that philosophy originally came from here. My birthplace is in Gujarat, specifically in North Gujarat, in Mehsana district, in a small town called Vadnagar. Historically, this town holds great significance. And so, Vadnagar is where I was born and completed my early education. My family, my father, my mother, my siblings, my uncles, aunts, grandparents, we all grew up together in a small house. The place we lived was likely even smaller than where we are sitting now. There was no window, just a small door. That's where I was born, that's where I grew up. Now, when people talk about poverty, it's natural to discuss it in the context of public life. And by those standards, my early life was spent in extreme poverty. But we never really felt the burden of poverty. You see, someone who is used to wearing fine shoes will feel their absence when they don't have them. But for us, we had never worn shoes in our lives. So, how would we even know that wearing shoes was a big deal? We weren't in a position to compare. That's just how we lived. Our mother worked incredibly hard. My father, too. He was extremely hardworking. And he was also extremely disciplined. Every morning around 4 or 4:30 a.m., he would leave the house, walk long distances, visit several temples, and then reach his shop. He wore traditional leather shoes, handmade in the village. The shoes were very tough and sturdy, making a distinct tock, tock, tock sound when he walked. People in the village used to say that they could tell the time just by hearing his footsteps. We never thought about being poor or judged about how others lived or what their struggles were. He is on his way. Such was his discipline. He worked tirelessly, late into the night. Our mother, too, ensured that we never felt the struggles of our circumstances. But despite everything, these challenging circumstances of living in scarcity never left a mark on our minds. We lived carefree, enjoying whatever little we had, and kept working hard. Never once did we complain about these things. And all these aspects of my life, whether you call it fortune or misfortune, unfolded in such a way in politics that they started coming to light. Because when I was taking my oath as chief minister, TV reporters went to my village, questioned my childhood friends, went to capture videos of my home. That's when people started asking, who is this and what background he is coming from? Before that, very few knew much about my life. That's just how my journey has been. My mother possessed an innate spirit of caring for others' well-being. It was woven into the very fabric of her being. She possessed knowledge of traditional remedies and healing practices and would treat children with these home remedies. Every morning before sunrise around 5 o'clock, she would start treating them. So all the children and their parents would gather at our home, little children crying, and we had to wake up early because of it. Meanwhile, my mother would continue treating them with care. This spirit of service, in a way, was nurtured through these experiences. A sense of empathy for society, the desire to do good for others. These values were instilled in me. from my family. I believe that my life has been shaped by my mother, my father, my teachers, and the environment I grew up in. I grew up in a very small town. Our life was all about being part of a community. We lived among people surrounded by them. That was just how life was. There was a library in the village, and I used to go there often to read books. Whenever I read something from the books, I often found myself feeling inspired, thinking, why shouldn't I shape my own life like that? That desire was always there. Now, my mother tongue is Gujarati, and we were not very familiar with the Hindi language, nor did we know how to speak it eloquently or communicate effectively. But as a child, I used to sit at my father's tea shop. And at that young age, I got the chance to meet so many people. And every time I learned something from them, I observed their ways of speaking, their expressions. These things taught me a lot. My village had a rich and ancient history. Discussions at school often revealed more fascinating details about its past. Later, I learned that China even made a film about it. I had read in a newspaper about a film that mentioned the Chinese philosopher Huan Tsang, who had spent a considerable amount of time in my village. Having arrived there, that's how I first learned about it. And perhaps around the 1400s, it was a prominent Buddhist educational hub. There was a victory monument from the 12th century, a temple from the 17th century, and in the 16th century, two sisters, Tana and Riri, who were renowned musicians. As I uncovered these history traces, I grasped the depth of our heritage. So, when I became chief minister, I initiated large-scale excavation projects. The findings from these very projects confirmed that thousands of Buddhist monks had, at one time, studied there. It was a place where Buddhist, Jain, and Hindu traditions coexisted harmoniously. And for us, history wasn't just confined to books. Every stone spoke. Every wall had a story to tell. And so, when we began the large-scale excavation work, we uncovered findings that hold immense historical significance. So far, they have discovered evidence dating back 2,800 years, proving that this city has remained unbroken and eternal for all those 2,800 years. They have discovered solid proof of how its development unfolded over these centuries. Now, an international level museum has been established there, open to visitors, especially for archaeology students. It has become a major area of study. So, the place where I was born holds its own unique historical significance. I see it as my good fortune. Some things in life unfold beyond our understanding. Kashi became my realm of duty. Now, Kashi is also eternal. Kashi, also known as Banaras or Varanasi, is an eternal city that has remained vibrant and alive for centuries. Perhaps it was some divine design that led a boy born in Vadnagar to eventually make Kashi his realm of duty, living in the embrace of Mother Ganga. All the young people the following. No matter how dark the night may seem, it is still just night. and morning is bound to come. That's why we need patience and self-confidence. Yes, the challenges are real, but I am not defined by my circumstances. I am here for a purpose, sent by a higher power, and I am not alone. The one who sent me is always with me. This unwavering faith should always remain within us. Difficulties are a test of endurance. They are not meant to defeat me. Hardships exist to make me stronger, helping me grow and improve, not to leave me feeling hopeless or discouraged. Personally, I see every crisis, every challenge as an opportunity. So, to all young people, I say, have patience. There are no shortcuts in life. At our railway stations, there hangs a sign for those who habitually cross the tracks instead of using the bridge. It reads, "Shortcut will cut you short." I would tell young people the same: shortcut will cut you short. There are no shortcuts in life. Patience and perseverance are essential. Whatever responsibility we are given, we must pour our heart into it. We should live it with passion, enjoy the journey, and find fulfillment in it. I truly believe that if this mindset is cultivated, it transforms life. Similarly, abundance alone is not enough. There is no guarantee of success. Even a wealthy person who indulges in comfort and idleness will eventually wither away. Instead, he must decide, yes, I may have resources around me, but I must use my abilities to grow them further. I must contribute more to society with my own strength. Even if I am in a good position, there is still so much more to do. Even if I am not in a good position, there is still so much work to do. That's what I believe. I have also noticed that some people tend to think, I've learned enough, that's it. But one should never let the student within them die. Learning should never stop. I believe that as long as I am alive, I must have a purpose. Instead of dreaming about getting and becoming, dream of doing something. If you focus on doing something, and let's say your goal is to reach 10, but you make it to 8, you won't feel discouraged. You'll still work toward 10 with determination. But if your dream is only to become something and it doesn't happen, even your achievements may feel like a burden. That's why we must adjust our mindset in life. Instead of thinking about what I got or didn't get, the mindset should be, what can I give? Because true contentment doesn't bloom on its own. It grows from the depths of what you give. Even though I wasn't in a position to apply it then, I thought, if I ever get the chance, why not? Why shouldn't I present myself well? So I believe the desire to learn should always remain alive. And another thing I've observed is that most people dream about achieving something or becoming someone. They set big targets. And when they fall short, they feel disappointed. That's why whenever I get a chance to talk to my friends, I tell them, look, India is a cultural identity. It is a civilization that dates back thousands of years. Consider the vastness of India. Over 100 languages, thousands of dialects. India is so diverse that we have a saying that every 20 miles the language changes. Customs change, cuisine changes, even clothing styles shift from region to region, from the south to the north. You will see immense diversity across the country. But if you dig a little deeper, you will find a common thread. For example, the stories of Lord Ram can be heard everywhere in India. His name echoes in every corner of the country. But if you look closely, from Tamil Nadu to Jammu and Kashmir, you will always find people whose names include Ram in some form. In Gujarat, he might be called Ram Bhai. In Tamil Nadu, Ramachandra. And in Maharashtra, Ram Bhau. This unique cultural bond is what unites India as one civilization. Take something as simple as bathing in water. We have a ritual where all the rivers of India are remembered. They chant, I am bathing with the waters of all these rivers. Ganga, Yamuna, Godavari, Saraswati, Narmada, Sindhu, Kaveri. It's a sentiment that unites a nation. And we have a long tradition of making such resolutions at the beginning of important events and rituals. And the resolution itself can present a historical record. And in so doing, serve as a way of collecting and preserving historical data. It has been an incredibly unique system, guided meticulously by our scriptures. When someone makes a resolution, performs a puja, or even during weddings, we start by invoking the entire universe, beginning with Jambudweep, Bharat Khand, Aryavrat, and gradually narrow it down to the village, then mentioning the specific family. And finally, we invoke the family deity. This practice is still alive, happening daily in every corner of India. But sadly, the Western and global models began viewing nations only as administrative systems. India, however, has had a variety of administrative systems throughout history. Many systems were fragmented, scattered, and varied across regions. Kings and rulers were numerous. But India's unity lay in cultural bonds. Pilgrimage traditions played a key role in preserving this unity. Shankaracharya established the 4 pilgrimage sites. Even today, millions of people travel from one place to another for pilgrimage. In Kashi, you'll find people who bring water from Rameshwaram to Kashi and take water from Kashi to Rameshwaram. Even if you look at our Hindu calendar, you'll find so many things across the country that you can't even imagine. I was born in Gujarat, and Gujarati is my mother tongue. Mahatma Gandhi was also born in Gujarat. His native language was Gujarati too. He pursued a career as an attorney and lived overseas for several years. He had plenty of great opportunities. But the deep sense of duty within him, along with the values instilled by his family, led him to give up all comforts and devote his life to serving the people of India. He joined the struggle for India's independence. And to this day, he continues to deeply influence the life of every Indian in some way. Mahatma Gandhi tried to live by his principles and practiced what he preached. For example, he strongly advocated for cleanliness and practiced it himself. And he made it a point to discuss cleanliness wherever he went. Another key factor to consider is India's fight for independence. India was ruled by the Mughals, the British, and several other foreign powers. Despite being bound by the shackles of colonial rule for centuries, the flame of independence burned brightly. In every corner and nook of India, never fading, always fueling the desire for freedom. Millions of people sacrificed their lives so the light of freedom could shine on India. They laid down their lives for freedom, sacrificing their youth behind prison walls. Mahatma Gandhi also fought for India's independence, but in his own way. Indeed, the other freedom fighters were brave warriors and devoted sons of Mother India. They came, they fought, and their martyrdom immortalized them. And they did indeed have a lasting impact. But it was Mahatma Gandhi who awakened the nation, leading a mass movement fueled by truth. And he wove even a sweeper into the very fabric of the freedom struggle. He told teachers their work was part of the freedom struggle. He told the people spinning thread and weaving clothes they were freedom fighters. He told those tending to lepers that their service was a step toward India's freedom. He viewed every task as a vital thread in the fabric of India's independence movement. And this transformed India's common man into a soldier in the quest for freedom. Gandhi forged a mass movement so immense that the British could never fully grasp it. The British never imagined that a pinch of salt from the Dandi March could spark a massive revolution, and he made it happen. And his life, presence, style, mannerisms all left a profound impact. And I have seen many of his stories evolve into timeless legends. I recall an incident from a roundtable conference. Yeah, I believe he was attending a roundtable conference. He was supposed to meet King George at the Buckingham Palace. Draped in his breechcloth, Mahatma Gandhi made his way to the palace. Many people were amazed that he had showed up in that attire to meet the king. Gandhi remarked he didn't need to wear a lot of clothes. He said, "Your king is wearing enough clothes for the both of us." This was the whimsical charm of his nature. Mahatma Gandhi possessed many remarkable qualities. His call for unity and recognition of the people's strength still resonates with me. In everything I do, I strive to include the common man. Mahatma Gandhi wasn't just a 20th century leader. His relevance transcends centuries. Mahatma Gandhi's legacy will last for centuries to come, and he remains relevant to date. As far as I am concerned, I have a responsibility to fulfill. Yet, the weight of that responsibility pales in comparison to my country. I am nowhere near as great as my country, and my strength lies not in my name, but in the backing of 1.4 billion Indians and thousands of years of timeless culture and heritage. So wherever I go, I carry with me the essence of thousands of years of Vedic tradition, the timeless teachings of Swami Vivekananda, and the blessings, dreams, and aspirations of 1.4 billion Indians. When I shake hands with a world leader, it's not Modi, but 1.4 billion Indians doing so. So this isn't my strength at all. It is rather the strength of India. India has always championed the ideas of global peace and brotherhood. For centuries, we have envisioned the world as one big family. Our noble ancestors envisaged the welfare of the whole world and universe. I have always aimed to initiate efforts that foster global well-being. And the global community needs to join hands to accomplish that. We must also understand that the world has become one small village today. No country can thrive in isolation. Today we all depend upon one another. No one can make it far by themselves. That is why you must learn to synchronize with everyone. And everyone else must learn to synchronize with you. That's the only way to propel this initiative forward. Organizations like the United Nations came into being after the First World War. But they failed to evolve with the times. And this inability to adapt has sparked a global debate on their relevance. Well, I represent the country, that is the land of Lord Buddha. I represent the country, that is the land of Mahatma Gandhi. These are the great souls whose teachings, words, actions, and behavior are entirely dedicated to peace. And that is why, culturally and historically, our background is so strong that whenever we speak of peace, the world listens to us. Because India is the land of Gautam Buddha. Indians aren't hardwired to espouse strife and conflict. We espouse harmony instead. We seek neither to wage war against nature nor to foster strife among nations. We stand for peace, and wherever we can act as peacemakers, we have gladly embraced that responsibility. Returning to your example, I have a close relationship with Russia and Ukraine alike. I can sit with President Putin and say that this is not the time for war. And I can also tell President Zelensky in a friendly way that, brother, regardless of how many people stand with you in the world, there will never be a resolution on the battlefield. The resolution will only come when both Ukraine and Russia come to the negotiating table. Ukraine may hold countless discussions with their allies, but it will bear no fruit. Discussions must include both parties instead. Initially, it was challenging to find peace, but now the current situation presents an opportunity for meaningful and productive talks between Ukraine and Russia. There has been a lot of suffering. Even the global south has suffered. The world has been grappling with a food, fuel, and fertilizer crisis. So, the global community should unite in the pursuit of peace. As for me, I have always maintained that I stand with peace. I am not neutral. I have a stance, and that is peace. And peace is what I strive for. Before 1947, during the struggle for independence, everyone was fighting side by side, shoulder to shoulder. And the nation was eagerly waiting to celebrate the freedom, the joy of independence. Now, we could have a lengthy discussion on what led to the events that unfolded. But the fact remains that the policymakers of the time agreed to India's partition. And they agreed to the Muslim side's demand of carving out a separate nation, with hearts weighed down by grief and silent tears. Indians embraced this painful reality. However, what unfolded was an immediate heartbreaking saga of bloodshed. Trains filled with bloodied, wounded people and corpses started arriving from Pakistan. It was a harrowing sight. After getting their own way, we expected them to live and let live. And yet, they chose not to foster a harmonious coexistence. Time and again, they decided to be at odds with India. They have waged a proxy war against us. Don't mistake this for ideology. What kind of ideology thrives on bloodshed and the export of terror? And we are not the sole victims of this menace. Wherever terror strikes in the world, the trail somehow leads to Pakistan. Let's take the September 11th attacks, for example. The main mastermind behind it, Osama bin Laden, Where did he eventually emerge from? He had taken refuge in Pakistan. The world has recognized that, in a way, terrorism and the terrorist mindset are deeply rooted in Pakistan. Today, it stands as an epicenter of turmoil, not just for India, but for the world. And we have repeatedly asked them what good can come from this path. We have urged them to abandon the path of state-sponsored terrorism for good. What do you hope to gain by surrendering your nation to lawless forces? I even personally traveled to Lahore in the pursuit of peace. When I became Prime Minister, I specially invited Pakistan to my swearing-in ceremony so we could turn over a new leaf. Yet, every noble attempt at fostering peace was met with hostility and betrayal. We sincerely hope that wisdom prevails upon them and they choose the path of peace. I believe even the people of Pakistan long for peace because even they must be weary of living in strife and unrest. They must have grown weary of relentless terror, where even innocent children are killed and countless lives are destroyed. Both President Trump and I were there, and the entire stadium was completely packed. A massive crowd at an event in the US is a huge moment. While packed stadiums are common in sports, this was extraordinary for a political rally. The Indian diaspora had gathered in large numbers. Both of us delivered speeches, and he sat down below listening to me speak. Now that's his humility. The President of the United States sitting in the audience while I spoke from the stage. That was a remarkable gesture on his part. After finishing my speech, I stepped down. And as we all know, security in the US is extremely strict and thorough. The level of scrutiny there is on a completely different level. I went over to thank him and casually said, "If you don't mind, why don't we take a lap around the stadium? There are so many people here. Let's walk, wave, and greet them." In American life, it's almost impossible for the president to walk into a crowd of
Yeah.
thousands. But without even a moment's hesitation, he agreed and started walking with me. His entire security detail was thrown off guard. But for me, that moment was truly touching. It showed me that this man had courage. He makes his own decisions, but also he trusted me and my lead in that moment enough to have walked with me into the crowd. It was that sense of mutual trust, a strong bond between us, that I truly witnessed on that day. And the way I saw President Trump that day, walking into a crowd of thousands without even asking security, was truly amazing. And if you watch the video now, you'll be amazed. When he was shot during the recent campaign, I saw the same resilient and determined President Trump, the one who walked hand in hand with me in that stadium. Even after being shot, he remained unwaveringly dedicated to America. His life was for his nation. His reflection showed his America First spirit, just as I believe in nation first. I stand for India first. And that's why we connect so well. These are the things that truly resonate. And I believe that across the world, politicians are covered so much by the media that people mostly perceive each other through its lens. People rarely get the chance to truly meet or personally know one another. And perhaps third-party intervention is the real cause of tensions. When I visited him in the White House for the first time, there was already a lot written about President Trump in the media. At that time, he was still new to office, and the world had a rather different perception of him. Even I had been briefed in many different ways before meeting him. But to my surprise, the very moment I stepped into the White House. He broke all formal protocols right away. And then he personally took me on a tour of the White House. As he showed me around, I noticed something striking. He wasn't holding any notes or cue cards, nor was anyone accompanying him to assist. He pointed things out himself. This is where Abraham Lincoln lived, he said. He even explained why the courtroom was designed so long. He would point at the table and tell me which president signed here and on what date. I found that incredibly impressive. It showed how much he honored the presidency and how respectful and deeply connected he was to America's history. I could feel that. And he spoke to me freely, discussing many things openly. That was my experience from our first meeting. Later, when his first term ended and President Biden won, 4 years passed. But during that time, whenever someone we both knew met him, and this must have happened dozens of times, he would say, Modi is my friend, convey my regards. That kind of gesture is rare. Even though we didn't meet physically for years, our direct and indirect communication, our closeness, and the trust between us remained unshaken. At one time, Buddhism had a profound influence in China. And that philosophy originally came from here. Our relationship should remain just as strong in the future. It should continue to grow. Of course, differences are natural when two neighboring countries exist. Occasional disagreements are bound to happen, even within a family. Not everything is always perfect. But our focus is to ensure that these differences don't turn into disputes. That's what we actively work toward. Instead of discord, we emphasize dialogue. Because only through dialogue can we build a stable, cooperative relationship that serves the best interests of both nations. It is true that there have been ongoing border disputes between us. And in 2020, the incidents along the border created significant tensions between our countries. However, after my recent meeting with President Xi, we have seen a return to normalcy at the border. We are now working to restore conditions to how they were before 2020. Slowly, but surely, trust, enthusiasm, and energy will return. But of course, it will take some time since there's been a 5-year gap. Our cooperation isn't just beneficial, it's also essential for global stability and prosperity. And since the 21st century is Asia's century, we want India and China to compete in a healthy and natural way. Competition is not a bad thing, but it should never turn into conflict. Just as a geopolitical order emerged after World War II, many thought something similar would happen post-COVID. But unfortunately, instead of moving towards peace, the world became even more fragmented, ushering in a period of uncertainty. And the wars have only made it worse. I believe that modern wars are no longer just about resources or interests. Today I see so many kinds of conflicts happening. Physical battles often get discussed. Struggles are happening in every domain. International organizations that were once powerful have become almost irrelevant. No real reforms are happening. Institutions like the UN are failing to fulfill their roles. People who disregard international laws and rules continue to act freely, and no one can stop them. In such situations, the prudent choice for everyone is to let go of conflict and move toward cooperation. And a development-driven approach is the way forward. Expansionism will not work. As I've said before, the world is interdependent and interconnected. Every nation needs one another. No one can stand alone. And from all the different forums I attend, one thing is clear. Everyone is deeply worried about these conflicts. We can only hope that peace is restored very soon.